Well, welcome back to another session of the 8th grade painting project. We're doing the preparatory sketch right now. I'm going to kind of take down my corners. I really don't want this surface moving around while I am attempting to draw on it. It could mess up the video there, as I'm sure you could understand. Okay, so today's session, we really just want to finish up the drawing that we've got going here, then clean it so it's appropriately ready for painting in the next session, and then go through and bold the lines because this graphite can really smear into your paint. Okay, so here's I made a change yesterday. You may have remembered that we had this curved like this, but it just wasn't logically making sense, this curved surface here. And so what I did was I erased the curved surface out, and I redrew in just a horizontal line right here, so it just touches at the top of the foot of the stand that holds our cheese or cake up. And then so what I did after I drew that line right here, I started using this as fabric. Okay, so it's going to ripple along a little bit, and where it hits the bottom of this box or stand it's on, it just curves. It doesn't really bend real sharply. So what I'm attempting to do is to cause this to look more like fabric. So I'm going to go through here, and I'm just going to wave that line in and out a little bit, and see, I can erase the more vertical aspect of this, so it looks a little bit more like fabric coming around the corner. And right there where it hits into that crease, see, I'll just you know, curve it rather than having a really sharp angle on it. So that's how we're going to handle all of these stripes. Right where they hit that center line there, they're going to curve. Okay, and if you really are, you know, you can actually kind of use some lazy S's on here to go back and forth, and that's how you kind of get the effect of fabric. Okay, is that it ripples along, you know, it's and kind of down here as well. So what I'm going to do at the end of all of this, I'm going to dress that up a little bit so that it looks a little bit more accurate. But that's what I've kind of decided to do here with this, is we took out the curved part, didn't make logical sense, and don't want logic problems in your drawing, and then we simply drew in this horizontal line that rests right on the top of the foot of your cheese stand. Okay, now having said that, let's move back to some more information that we got going on here as well. So we've got our cheese stand. In the middle of all of this, we're going to just make a series of little concentric, meaning like if you dropped a pebble into a puddle, you'd get these little concentric oval shapes or circles. Now it would be circles if we were looking at it straight on, but in this case they're ellipses. And that's so it just mimics that wood grain that's on top of this stand. So if you saw a tree like firewood, if you ever looked at firewood, you would notice that it has rings in it, and that's what we're trying to simulate here with these concentric ellipses. So when we paint this, we'll take some time to, you know, try to really make that look like wood grain in there as much as possible. Okay, so all of that is just an indication of wood grain. Now on our cheese, we also have a rind, a portion of it that is when it's made out of, it's got wax sometimes, so the cheese is dipped in this wax to preserve it. And so we're just going to put a little outline around the cheese. Now this one won't be, because that's in the center of the cheese wheel. So we're really just trying to get that little indication that there is a, if it's cake, then that would be the icing on your cake, or the layers in between your layers of your layer cake, I suppose. If it's cheese, it's just got this like wax coating on the outside of it, and it preserves it. Okay, now also on our knife, we're going to have a blade of the knife and also just the back of the blade, which has no blade on it. It's not sharpened. So we're simply just going to put a crescent, a reverse crescent on there, indicating where the blade of the knife is at. And it should look like it's laying on the cheese stand, not just floating up into space. Alright, now that brings us over to our bowl of fruit. Our bowl of fruit is going to have some items in it, and they need to be rather large, but not so big that they look like they're being jammed into the bowl of fruit. So I think the first thing that I like to put in here is something that you all will recognize, and that would of course be a pear. And so we need to draw like an ellipse, or kind of an oval, more of an egg shape, just like we did. Now it's slightly tilted because it's sitting in the bowl. Okay, now we're going to, after we do that, we're going to pass a line through the middle of it so it looks like it's sitting at an angle. Alright, then we will pass another ellipse down through here. It's slightly wider, and then this portion of the ellipse will disappear down into the bowl, or the oval shape. So this is going to be a pear that will be sitting inside the bowl. This is the actual edge of the bowl right here. There's a microscopic space in between those two things. Now, just like we did in 6th grade, we do our lazy S. That shows us the top of our pear, and then the reverse lazy S over here that forms the bottom of the pear. And then we'll simply erase these things out. And since the pear is obscuring the back of the bowl, and it's also obscuring the fabric that is behind it, we can erase all of the stuff that has been blocked by the image of the pear can get erased out. And then we will simply dust that and go back and try to bold it a bit. Now there will be a banana also in here, and I believe we will also try to put some grapes into this bowl as well. Okay, so our pear could use a stem, so let's put a stem protruding from the top of our pear. Now we're going to have a banana is going to be started about right here, and it's going to pass in front of the pear anyway. So if we start about right here, and we're going to have the banana pass in front of the pear, and we're going to put a little square at the top of it, and then the next section of the banana is wider, and it disappears down into the bowl as well. And then there's a part of this one will tilt down slightly like that. So while we're at it, let's erase the portion of the pear that is obscured by the banana. Okay. And also the back of the bowl, which the banana now also obscures, meaning we can't see it. Now we're going to draw one more crescent like this, and it will disappear down into the bowl as well. And then we can erase anything that's blocked by the banana. Now the banana will also have a stem on it, and in this case the stem of the banana is shaped a bit like a rectangular cube. So it would be something kind of like, well, you might be able to follow one of these lines straight up, and it has a teeny little bit of an indication that it's a kind of an awkward cube. I'm struggling with this. Come here. There we go. See, I'm trying to get too much stem on the banana there. Okay, let's dust it and see what we got. That's not bad at all. So it's got a little tilty line, a little bit of a kind of a squarish stem on it, and then we're going to bold our lines on our banana. Now lastly, I think we're going to put some grapes into this bowl as well, and these grapes will be in front of the banana and the pear and will be falling out of the bowl, and so they will be hanging down somewhere to about right here. So when you're drawing grapes, don't think about what they, just draw circles of them. And they're not all precisely the same size, but they're pretty much the same size. So, and we'll put some up here. We're going to have a bunch of grapes, and they're going to be spilling out of the bowl right here. Some of them will be, here we go, and the same over here. They'll be coming out the top of the bowl, hanging like this, and see how they kind of go into each. Well, there's two, there's one in the middle between those two. Let's see, maybe we can put another grape right here, and maybe even another grape right here. See, now we're getting somewhere, and we can have some grapes right here, maybe another one right there, and then one more right at the bottom at the foot of the bowl. Now that says you probably want one right there, maybe a partial grape every once in a while that you can see. Now we have to, again, with that loose group of circles, we've got to go back here and we've got to erase out all of the stuff that is blocked by the grapes, and in this case that's going to be the banana and part of the pear as well. See in here, we don't have a, we can't see through that grape. We're just molding these. There should probably not be anything that we can see in there either. We can put a small grape in the middle of all of that. Okay, right here, the banana is obscured by that grape right there. Same thing here, edge of the bowl is obscured. Edge of this bowl is obscured. And the edge of this bowl is obscured. So we'll just keep going back after we make an erasing and bolding the lines indicating where our grapes are at. Okay, and in this case, there is a grape down here, and it is covering up a portion of the bowl. Now, let's see what we got here. That's kind of grape-like. We're going to have to go through and just spend our time, you know, you're always redrawing portions of a preparatory sketch so that you have a much more accurate concept of what you're going to be doing once you start painting it. Okay. Now, I'm going to, having done that, I have to figure out a way to kind of make a stem of some sort come out of these. And grapes are, of course, on vines, right? So we're just going to not even think about it. We're just going to draw a random kind of a shape that is, you know, narrow enough to pick up all these grapes. And you know how grapes grow. They grow in bunches, not necessarily, you know, little geometric order. Okay, so let's get in here and clean some of this information out. Okay, so let's see what we got now. So see, we're starting to get a drawing of a bowl of fruit and a cheese stand. So let's go back and kind of bold these lines now too, so we can carefully define the edge of the drawing, or the end of what am I trying to say? The compartments where the paint's going to go. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm struggling with that. Okay, and we're going to get this bolded a bit here, and I'm going to go back with a black colored pencil and bold all these lines up so they're much more visible on the projection screen. Okay, so that gives us something that we can start working with, and we can then just transition over to our fabric. And the fabric is, you know, not this corner up here, it curves over, and so we just kind of erase it because we want it to look natural. We don't want it to look like it was, you know, carved out of cement or something. And where these lines, they wave back and forth a little bit, you have to kind of play that wobbly line up right there in order to get it to look like it's a fabric. Okay, now you don't always have to have that line at the bottom, but it does help to remind you of what you're trying to achieve there. So sometimes it's more of a reference or a layout mark than anything. Okay, and we're just going to continue that. I'm going to do this over here so I don't lay my hand right in my drawing if I can avoid it. But right where these lines go around the corner at, we're simply going to we're going to curve it over. We're going to ease that line, and then we're going to wave our fabric along so it just kind of ripples on each side of this layout line. And we can carefully go back and, you know, erase portions of it away. Just like that. And then I dust it, and that looks pretty good, see? And we can continue that where it curves right here, see? Sometimes more tight corners, excuse me, than others. And we can clean all this out of there, and we can erase away. Same thing here. We're just going to continue this process where it just smoothly curves over the corner, and then it just kind of lazy S, kind of wobbles its way down our layout line until it gets down to the corner. And we can go back and erase those portions away. Kind of bolden a bit. So a lot of what we're doing here is simply just adjusting portions of the drawing so it will make a more attractive painting when we get that far with it. Okay, so we can do that same operation up in here. Just wave these lines along a little bit. When we get to here, that one is blocked, but we can kind of see it down here where it comes around the corner. So this one, you know, smoothly rounds the corner, and we can erase away, you know, the layout work. So this is how fabric is drawn and how fabric is painted many times. So it's really a learned, it's not some sort of skill that people are born with. It's learned, and you learn it by doing it and practicing it until you get it right. And that's life, folks. That's how it works. Some people may never get it right. Okay, so let's get that out of there. Okay, so see, we're making fabric here, and it's looking pretty good. Same thing here. It's gonna we can kind of see a little bit of it back there. We're gonna wobble it along. When it gets to the corner, we're gonna let it just drape over the corner, curve like, and then this line just gets a lazy S on either side of it. So we're just working on the fabric. That's all we're doing right now. And waving this along, just lazy S's. That's all it is. And this one as well. And it really starts to look like that fabric effect once we get all this going here. Okay, let's see. I'm feeling pretty good about that. I'm looking at the projection screen. That is beginning to look like fabric. So we'll simply continue that same practice until we get to the corner here. And then it will transition smoothly. When it hits down here, it's already been done. Same thing over here. We're going to curve it back and forth, wobbling that line back and forth across the layout line. And then, when possible, erase portions of the layout line that are still visible. And then it gets to here and it curves it gently over that corner. Okay, so let's see what we have achieved here. That is starting to look pretty good. It's starting to look like a preparatory sketch. Now, the last thing is we do have to take care of that line there. It doesn't make visual sense if it is everything else is curved and kind of buckled up, and this one is not. So then we can go back and erase portions of our layout work that is causing it to look more boxy rather than natural. So that's pretty good too. Now the very back of this line would also be kind of wobbled along as well if you want it to look natural. Otherwise it will just look however it looks, which is sometimes confusing. Okay, so what we've got going here is a good sketch. Now there is a object missing in here that we did not put in, and it's a goblet, which is a glass of sorts, and it is going to go up here on this stand, and it's going to not be very tall. I've monkeyed with the idea of putting it down here. I could put it right here as well, so if I did that, it would probably have to be pretty tall. But in this case, we can set it up here. So let's start by putting its foot. It probably shouldn't be bigger than the bottle. So we're going to draw a ellipse representing the bottom of the goblet, the base. Okay, now, like many other things we have done, we are going to draw a line that goes straight up the middle, and it will probably end up somewhere up here touching the clock. Okay, now we're going to draw another smaller ellipse right in the middle of the base of the goblet stand. Now we're going to have to do some erasing so that we can see what we are doing in here. And so you really got to get into the habit of erasing anything that might be a distraction of what you're attempting to see. Okay, so that's where we're at right now. We've got, so you can see we've done a lot of ellipses in this project already, and I'm trying to just clean off parts of the base of my goblet there so that I can clearly see it. Okay, now that's pretty clear. Now we've got to, we're going to go about this distance. We're going to put this just intruding into the middle of the clock a bit. And we have to estimate this in, I guess I would call it thirds. Maybe not. Let's try it this way. If we split it in half, this way, so we're just going to put a little mark halfway up the vertical line. And then if we put another halfway down and another one halfway up. So that gives us some reference marks. Okay, so what I think we'll do is we'll just above this line, we're going to draw a little circle about like this. Yeah, that looks okay. That'll be fine. Now, this ellipse that's at the bottom here, we're going to join these two things together right there. And we're going to simply just do it with like a parenthesis. Maybe not. Maybe we should do it the other. Maybe, well, maybe. This will work. This will work. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to join it together right where it hits the outside of that ellipse with just a slightly bowed line. Now that gives us a chance to go back and erase stuff. Okay, now, and maybe out of the middle of the circle too. So let's redraw, bold it, and it should have a kind of a little elliptical base and a smiley face at the bottom of it. So it should look something like that. And we aren't being able to see through it, although it will be a glass of sort. Okay. Now let's go back and bold our lines so we can clearly see what we are attempting to draw here. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now, here's where this starts getting tricky. At the very top of this, we're going to make a ellipse almost exactly the same size as this one. So the top of it will be parked right there, And we just got to kind of look at it, and we could, like, visually, if we needed to, kind of estimate, because really all we're doing is creating a fancied up cylinder. Okay, so it's an ellipse because we can see slightly inside of it. Okay, now let's clear off anything that can mess with our vision of that. That would be part of it right in there too, because the clock is obscured by that top ellipse. Now that is the rim, or the rim of the cup, or the vessel, the glass. Now here's where it's going to get kind of tricky. This right here, what we've got to do is we want to bow this line out. So what we're going to do is draw this line over here as a reference, and it's just slightly wider than the rim of our glass. So what we're going to do is we're going to go from the rim of the glass, we're going to bow it out, and when it hits that, it's going to curve back dramatically and plug into the top of the circle. So it should be a smooth curve. And this will be exactly the opposite of that. Let's see what we're doing here. Man, this is kind of obscuring what I'm looking at. Here we go. Okay, so we've got a glass back there. So now let's go ahead and erase out all of our layout work and anything that is obscured behind the glass. Okay, carefully cleaning it up without totally erasing everything that we've already done. Okay, let's see what we got here. Well, I gotta say, it's starting to look pretty good there, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm going to go back and bold my lines. And my rim of my glass. Maybe take out some of the stray markings. Okay, so what do we got going here? This is looking pretty good. So we've got ourselves a glass and a bottle and a bowl of fruit and a cheese stand and a window and a clock. And so we're getting what I guess I would call a bit of a composition here. Now in the middle, about halfway up, we're going to draw another ellipse, very much like this. This would be the top of the liquid that's in the glass. And it should touch very accurately the sides of the container, or the glass that it's in. And that is looking pretty good. Now I'm thinking we can probably go ahead and do some erasing now, and then we're going to just start bolding these lines. So all of this back here is going to go away. Well, we could turn it into paneling, couldn't we? Maybe we will. But in the meantime, we're just going to clean this up. It's really important that all of this smudgy material, and you probably have got your back of your hand, your drawing hand is probably also quite smudged up. And so it's important that we get all of this as much as possible. Now you may never be able to get everything off of the drawing, but it's important that we try to get as much of it off as possible in order to not interfere with the adhesion, like the glue that's in the paint. So we just got to constantly be going around and cleaning these marks off of here and trying to get all of the smearing out of it. And that's a common complaint amongst the 8th graders, is that these canvas boards like I'm working on, and if we were in the physical classroom you would be working on, are just, they just smear and they grind down your pencil, and you get dirt on the back of your hands constantly, and it's really hard to keep it clean. So that's why you should dedicate some time to getting it clean once we've got it drawn here, which is probably pretty close to having. Okay, let's get all that out of there. Lighten these lines if we must. We know they're there. When we paint it, it'll show up just fine. Okay, let's see, anything in our bowl of fruit that we can't really see has to be erased out. And then I just start aiming for all of the areas of the drawing that I see smears and smudges on. And you may not be able to see it on the projection screen, but I sure can. I'm right here on the painting board right in front of me. So I'm just going to continue to clean my painting board. Some of this paint, when we're using lighter colors, it will certainly show through. The markings will certainly show through some of the lighter colors that we'll be using. And we're really only going to use red, yellow, blue, black, and white. And we're going to mix all of our colors from those colors. And so it could be kind of exciting as a lesson here. You never know precisely what kind of a color you're going to get sometimes when you start mixing them up. Okay, well, I do declare that that's a pretty good looking drawing so far, with the exception of our clock up there. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start bolding up these lines, and that should get us to the end of this session, and then we are going to begin painting in the very next session. So once you've got this part done, you will definitely need to acquire some red, yellow, blue, black, and white paint so that you can do the project. And I would probably put it onto a like a paper plate or something. They work pretty good if you're using acrylics, and that's what this project was originally designed for, was to be an acrylic painting project. Now I know if this is an e-lesson for you, you may not have access to some of these paints, and so you will just have to try to use whatever paint that you can acquire, but anything that you can clean up with soap and water, that's probably the best. If you've got to use paint thinner and stuff, you really are going to have issues, and ventilation issues. You're probably going to have to work outside. But with acrylic paint, we don't have those kinds of issues. So I would recommend that if you can acquire it. If you can't, well, then you're just going to have to use whatever kind of paint you can acquire. And it may mix up differently. That also is a real problem with this. So you may be, if you're not using acrylic paint like I am, you may find that when you attempt to mix colors like I'm mixing, that you won't get quite the exact same color. And that's just because the chemistry between the different types of paints may vary. And so if you're using a type of a varnish or an oil-based enamel, and I'm using acrylic paint, well, the colorants that go into these paints may be different. And so the chemistry of how they mix up may also be affected by that. And that is where you will find that you're going to have problems if we're doing it as an e-lesson. Now, if we're in the physical classroom and you're simply following along on the video here, well, then that's a whole different story. You should be able to accurately follow along in class, and I will be there to show you how to do a lot of the skills that we've spent some time developing here. And furthermore, we would all be using the same type of paint, and that would make it so much less complex, especially for a student that maybe is not in the physical classroom, that has to try to figure this out kind of on their own. So I'm simply using a black colored pencil here to bold my lines, and most of the time the colored pencil will not melt when it is touched by paint. And this will really, really help you keep it inside the lines too when we start painting, because you'll be able to clearly see those lines, and that's pretty important. Whoa! I guess I caught that though very, very accurately on one hop. So there you go. That's looking pretty good. I'm pretty impressed with this. Okay, let's move on over to here now, and we'll start the bowl next. And so if I were a student, which you all are watching this, I would probably have a black colored pencil from our previous project available. And once we get the picture drawn, just like we have, you could go back, just like I'm doing, after you clean it, and bold the lines, and it will smear around a lot less than just regular pencil lead graphite. That graphite is really very, very smudgy, and it can really mess up your painting and corrupt and pollute your colors as well. So we will, oh well, there you go. We will be actually painting in the next session, so get your board cleaned up like you have seen me doing. Let's get the outlining or the key lining done here on all of our objects with a dark colored pencil, and then we will be ready to start painting in the next session. So good luck, and you should have something very similar to what you see in front of you right now. And if you don't, well, then you need to try to figure out why, alright? Because in a step-by-step instructional process like we're going through right here, everybody should come out with almost exactly the same picture. Now, it won't always be perfectly the same picture, right? Everybody's going to have their own version of how pictures are done. Alright, so I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing here off camera, but in the next session, when we get back together again, you will be expected to have what you see in front of you, and maybe your clock back here set to some sort of an actual time, and we may even go as far as to put like the indication of a chair or something in the background underneath the window here as well. We'll think about that, but I will see you in the next session. Have a nice day.